Yeah, I'm definitely a perfectionist in recovery too. For me, I had the gift of, my son is now 23 years old, and he was born with a cleft lip and palate. So I didn't realize I was a perfectionist until I saw him in that, and I didn't even realize that until a good number of years later, like 10 years later at least, in that there was a part of me that thought that that because he had his cleft was part of a whole syndrome, so it could have had it could have had affected other organs, it could have affected his cognitive capacity. And so the perfectionist in me said, well, if he's going to be challenged physically or mentally, then I am going to work to make sure he is at the top of whatever range he is capable of being at. And so I did, I just wore myself ragged, trying to make sure that I was a good enough mother, and with those kind of metrics going on. And I think in retrospect, I look at it and I think, well, 5 years he was 5 years old when I was with a group of women who I talked about this out loud for the first time, this guilt I felt for birthing him with this condition that he now has to live the rest of his life with. And the feedback I got from them was totally outside what my brain could ever have come up with by itself, which is, Sarah, you don't know what his path is in life. His path is not your path. In fact, what you're trying to do to make him fit in or try to fix what you're trying to fix, like, you may be getting in his way, actually. And I was like, what? But I'm supposed to fix things. I'm supposed to make up for things. So that was the beginning of my perfectionism breaking. And that was a very good, very painful, but very good thing. Yeah, so I'm not recovered. I'm still recovering.
It's such a process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what you're talking about. One, I just want to applaud those wise women. Thank you.
Yes.
I think that's a message that we all need to hear. Like that you don't know the path of your children. It's very
Right.
tempting for me to say, oh yeah, she's gonna do this towards my daughter, but just to recognize, yeah, those are my projections, and maybe those are my dashed hopes and dreams.
It's my plans.
Not
What?
me.
It's not about my plans? His life, not about me?
Yeah, these are my plans for you. So, but also just to recognize the shaming messages that we're brought up with that we don't even recognize are there. They're so deeply ingrained, they're so unconscious, and they kind of inform all of our actions without our conscious knowledge of it until we go through something like what you just described, Sarah. And it kind of provides a wake-up call because you're working with it all the time, right? You're just
Right.
coming up against it over and over and over again.
Right.
Oh, hello, you're here again. Okay, well,
Yeah.
is this working?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the thing is, like what you were describing, it just sounds so exhausting. And it,
Oh, yeah. In fact, that's one of the cues now I can tell when I'm getting into my perfectionism, is that I start to get tired. I start to get fatigued because I'm trying, again, it just goes up slowly, slowly, slowly until it reaches a threshold where my body feels it. I just take on this little bit more, and then this little bit more, and this little bit more, without doing the necessary letting go along the way.
yeah. One of the things that was striking to me is that when Sherry was talking about like making these really perfect projects, and I was thinking of working hard on a school project, and you go and you put it up at the science fair or whatever. You're like, all right, I worked really hard on this. And then you look at it through somebody else's eyes and you think, oh, well, I guess it doesn't look that great. I worked so hard on this and it's not perfect anymore. It's like this completely unattainable like mountaintop. So it doesn't matter how hard you work almost. It's like you can never attain it.
I know jealousy and envy have to be involved in the mix, but of all the emotions that Carla talks about, those are the ones that are most mysterious to me, even after all these years of working at a deep level with all the emotions. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? How jealousy and envy might be help us with first of all, what role they might be playing in perfectionism, and then also how they might help us move out of perfectionism.
Um, I also struggle a lot with those two of all of the emotions, but I've been working at them the past few years to really try and understand them better. And they're very much involved in my perfectionist tendencies because my contracts around like that I think are the root of perfectionism are all having to do with I'm not valuable unless I'm perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had a lot of stuff happen in my life, and regarding relationships, for example, like I've not had good luck there, and maybe it is just luck, but my emotions and my contracts are saying, well, if you do XYZ, then you should be in a relationship. And so a lot of jealousy and envy, basically are my jealousy and envy are coming up to be like, well, look at that person. If they can do it, then I should be able to do it. I want what they have, or and so.
And that way it fuels perfectionism.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's a lot about like, I want these things and I haven't been able to get them. Not just relationships, like other things as well. And so there's the fallback is shame's like, I know why. Yeah, I've got a contract here. and you just have to work harder. And in some ways that is a distraction, right, from the problem. And not to kind of always bring in my favorite emotion, but but in that case, yeah, exactly. It's like without grief, you can't, sometimes you can't let go. Like sometimes sadness isn't enough. Like there's certain things that you need grief in order to move on from, in order to have that that priority flip that you mentioned. And I think when that happens, and this is actually something I'm kind of going through like as we speak, this kind of, I have this hint of like some sort of shift in awareness in terms of that. But I think when you're able to let go, whether it be through sadness or grief, of some of those really kind of deep contracts, that then allows jealousy and envy to come in to be like, okay, what do we really want? Like you can't have everything. Like you can't literally have everything, so choose something.
Right. That, and depression will let you know that. The reality check of depression will say, no, that's not an option, having everything.
So it really,
and then jealousy hones in on what do you really want.
Well, that's just it. It requires jealousy and envy to identify. But if like myself, and it sounds like yourself as well, if you don't have great access to it, that can be hard. It can be hard to figure out what is the most important. What is, what are the things that I really want?
Oh, I like that. Yeah, I can see that now. Thank you for that. Yeah, that would be really important to be able to help sadness identify what needs to be let go, and help anger identify what needs to be protected.
But also they would give you the energy, give your anger the energy to take action to protect the things that are important to you, but also to take action towards doing things that are going to help you get those things that you want. right? So maybe if you're envious and gosh, I really wish I had a more prestigious job, instead of just feeling envious and kind of like going in circles, you might turn that inward and say, okay, well, what are the actions I can take in my life right now to help me get there?
Right.
Right. And
Right.
like, and your anxiety would help you too, you know, make a list.
Right. There, you're inviting in the fears. Right. Right. Like orienting to what is needed, and then setting a task for anxiety. And then something I see a lot with people who have eating disorders is panic comes in when they think about letting something go.
Mm.
So if you have like a panic level, if the first fear emotion on the scene is panic, that if you don't know what emotions are there trying to help you do, that just screams danger to you, right? That the saber-toothed tiger is in the vicinity, it's going to jump on me. If I give up this, if I gain weight, or if I'm not the perfect parent, or if I'm not perfect dating material, or whatever. But then even panic is there to help, because if that's there, I'm going to guess it's pointing to some trauma somewhere, some source that taught you that your value is dependent on being not this, but that. And panic is there to help you find the healing actions necessary for that trauma. And when you find that, it makes all the other emotions much more accessible, because until then, it's just danger, threat, warning signs going off.
I think also panic comes up when you're threatening a sense of your identity. So
Oh yeah.
Identify yourself as being somebody who's super skinny, or the perfect parent, or whatever it is, always in a relationship, that kind of a thing. And when that's not true anymore, and when you have to confront that, the truth of that, then it's, well, you definitely have to welcome in grief to recognize, like, oh, that's not true. You know, maybe it was never true, and this part of myself, you know, does not exist.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my, like, reality shift there. It really is. It's like you have to let go, and it feels so terrible when you first start that grieving process. It's because there's this unknown right in front of you. Like, you don't know, you've had this thing with you for so long, and now it's like you're recognizing, oh, I made that up. It doesn't exist, or I lost that. Whichever one it is, it's no longer there, right? So you're grieving it. You're going through this transformative process, and it's like, it's when you go through that process that you can kind of accept the pieces of you that are there. Like, kind of it's a taking stock as well. You know, once you're all cleared out, you're back to square one and say, oh, okay, well, I'm not a perfect parent. I'm just a parent, and I'm going to try to do the best I can from now on. Whatever that looks like. And like, I've got these skills, and hey, I want to get better over this area, so maybe I can get some help.
Yeah, the terror is real. It like, you know, I just want to kind of reiterate that point of it's, you get to, you have, you know, you're basically being asked to, when you're in that position, like about to go through some sort of transformation, when your emotions have brought you to this place where it's like suicide urge, you know, something, not like, you know, something's got to change, like this is real, like this has got to end. And sometimes that is, like you said, it's like this kind of mask, if you know, or like way that I thought I was, that I wasn't. But you have to basically put everything on the table, knowing that it could all disappear, and what you're left with on the other side, it might be a total, like, there's no guarantees, and that
no guarantees.
it's horrifying.
Panic's got a lot of work to do. And suicidal urge and grief, like all the big hitters.
Yeah.
If we I think one of the gifts of perfectionism is it is what brings us to our knees, because until we get broken, like the name of my group counseling practice is Brave Acorn, And the reason I called it that is because when a acorn breaks down and that first green shoot comes out, to the oak tree it's going to become, it can look back on that moment as breakthrough, but to the acorn itself, that green shoot coming out, that's something new emerging, the acorn can only ever experience that first as breakdown. It does not know what it's going to grow into. It sees as something different. It may be promising, it may be terrifying, but it is breaking down. It takes a lot of courage to stick with that process. And so perfectionism drives that breaking down of the acorn eventually. Some of us last longer than others. But it drives the breakdown, which eventually becomes breakthrough. Because all the perfectionists I've ever worked with are very hard workers, and it's and nothing will bring them, very few things will bring them to their knees, but perfectionism does. And that's good news.
That reminds me of the quote. I think you both saw it, and I can't remember who said it now. We'll have to look it up later, but let me fall, the one I am becoming will catch me.
Ooh, I've not heard that.
Yeah.
Say that again.
I might be misinterpreting it a little, like missing some words, but it's let me fall, the one I am becoming will catch me.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's
Yeah.
gorgeous.
One of the folks in the DEI program shared that, and it's just like, oh, so simple, but like, yes, so much there.
Yes. Yes, so all these big, strong emotions, because when we go through life ignoring our regular sadness, our regular anger, our regular fear, eventually the bigger hitters are going to have to come on the scene to get our attention. They have a lot of work to do depending on how far you take this perfectionism in your life. And you really can't call yourself a perfectionist unless you're taking it pretty far. I mean, just to be noticed that, oh, you're being kind of perfectionistic there. I mean, you've already crossed a threshold.
Something I did years ago, kind of like when I realized that, you know, I don't really have like a defining moment in terms of like, oh, this was a, you know, but progressively it became, okay, this is not a sustainable way of living, you know, in terms of if I mess up or make a mistake, like, you know, going into a self-loathing spiral for, you know, days, weeks, months, whatever. It's like, it's not going to get you where you want to go. That's another, you know, jealous and envy, be like, it's not gonna. But, you know, as I kind of learned to let certain aspects of that go, I rewrote my contract about perfection, because I still love when things are perfect. But now I firmly adhere to the concept that perfection is fluid. Like perfection can only ever happen momentarily. Like you can have a perfect sky, but it's only perfect right now in this moment with my mood and the, you know, the everything else going on. In, you know, in tomorrow, in a second, it's not going to be perfect anymore. And that's really been helpful for me, because I don't have to let go of the that drive that perfection brings, right? But I can let go of the kind of shame spiral that comes when I don't achieve it. It's like, and you know, every once in a while, like you know, and throughout my work or kind of things that I do, every once in a while, somebody like, oh, that's perfect. And I'm like, yeah, that allows my contentment to come up, because I'm like, yes, it is. And it's okay, because I know it's not going to last. It's kind of like what we learn to do with the happiness emotions in this work. It's like perfection comes, but I don't expect it to stay. I don't expect it to last more than a second, or you know, like not even a second, just a brief moment. And that has helped me a lot. Like, you know, just kind of perfection is fluid. That's just the way it is.
Yes.